Sometimes crazy things happen. It's impossible to control chaos. And sometimes it's impossible to see what in hindsight may be clear. Bobbie Jo never knew. She never realized that the storm was right on her heels. But it was never unmotivated chaos that drove the madness to Bobbie Jo's front door. It was a woman that desperately wanted a baby. And it just so happened that Bobbie Jo Stinnett was pregnant. Her pregnancy painted a target on the young woman, not on her back, but on her belly. It's a tragic story, but what would you expect? It's the story of Bobbie Jo. The town of Skidmore was founded by Martin E. Skidmore in the 1800s. By the 1880s there was 400 inhabitants living in the small, rural Missouri town. But Skidmore and the county it sits in, Nottoway County, has just like any other place on earth, dark things in its past. But there is something about this place that strikes a darker chord. In 1930 a schoolteacher was raped and beaten to death at her workplace. It's one of those murders I feel like every town or county has one of. But it wasn't that simple. The man responsible for the teacher's death was later caught. His name was Raymond Gunn and he was a black man. This may have been the first time mob justice took action, but it sure as shit wouldn't be the last time. An angry mob broke Raymond out of the jail and dragged him out to the school where he had raped and murdered a woman. There they tied him up with chains and started pouring gasoline all over him. There was a lot of people in the mob, and gallons of gasoline were being passed around to be poured over the man. Then the match was lit and the mob rejoiced as the screams of agony and pure pain rose from the burning man. In 1994, a farmer named Bill was having marital problems. He was jealous and was sure that something was going on, so one day he killed one of the cats they owned and placed its dead body in front of one of his farming machines, a combine. Whatever that is, I'm not so sure, but anyway, he called his wife over, and as she stood over the dead cat, Bill climbed into his combine and ran her over, crushing every bone in her body. In another small town in Nottoway County, more dark things happened. The year was 1972, and 15 years old Benny Kemper had a crush on a girl in his school. Her name was Honey, but her brother Billy was a bully to Benny. He would tease him for his crush he had on his sister. Benny Kemper made up a plan to kill Billy. He took a flashlight, a knife, and a rifle with him that day as he broke into Billy's and Honey's home. He realized then that he had to kill the entire family if he wanted to get away with it. So he crept into the basement and waited. He could hear Honey, Billy and their two parents come home and get ready for bed. As the house was quiet, he silently made his way into the parents' bedroom. With ice-cold precision, he shot the sleeping father in the head. The mother woke up, drenched in her husband's blood, and as she did, Benny aimed the rifle at her and pulled the trigger. He then made his way upstairs, to Billy's room. He opened the door and could see that Billy was awake. He was sitting up in his bed, just looking at Benny, as Benny raised his rifle and shot Billy dead. Then Honey woke up. She had heard noise and was making her way to her brother's room when Benny intercepted her with his rifle. She pleaded for her life and Benny told her that he would spare her if she took her clothes off. She was shaking, afraid, but she did as the 15-year-old psycho had asked. Then he started walking away. She must have felt some relief, but it didn't last long, because Benny spun around and emptied his magazine in her. He had killed all 4 of them. And the next day, as the school bus stopped in front of Billy's house, Benny told the driver that they wouldn't be going to school anymore. He was later arrested and tried as an adult. Many years later, in 2002, a 71-year-old man would walk into a monastery in the same town. There he would shoot several people dead. There is more, but let's turn our eyes to the town that sits in the spotlight of today's episode. Skidmore. There's one thing that Skidmore is most known for, and that is the murder of the town bully Ken McElroy. This video isn't about Ken McElroy, so I won't be going too deep into him. I'll just dip the tip in old Ken. So just like I said, he was a bully. His entire family was bullies. He pushed everyone around and was charged for rape and assault, but he never seemed to get caught. He seemed to be immune to the laws. Everyone was beneath him on the totem pole. No one fucked with Ken McElroy. But one day, the town had enough. Ken McElroy may have been a relatively powerful individual, but there is great strength in large numbers. And Ken didn't stand a chance that day. 60 citizens had gathered to face Ken McElroy as he pulled up in front of them in his car. His wife was in there with him too. He was pleased with the fear on the faces he saw. He wanted to cherish the moment instead of drive away. So as he lit his cigarette, a shot rang out, and his wife was all of a sudden covered in the bully's blood. Then more shots, from the side, from the back, and from the front. After all was said and done, police arrived and the crowd dispersed, revealing the dead body of Ken McElroy. His body was ridden with bullet holes. No one said a thing. Everyone was happy with the results. The town had conspired to kill Ken. Ken McElroy died in 1981. But as he died, something else was born. In 1981, Bobbie Jo Stinnett was born. Bobbie Jo was born in 1981 and suffered from a cleft palate. This made it difficult for her to speak properly throughout her childhood and sometimes made her a target for bullies. But she overcame it, and as she got older and learned to speak properly, the cleft palate was barely noticeable. Her upbringing wasn't anything remarkable. It was a normal childhood in the American Midwest. In college, she met Seb. They soon became a couple and married in their early 20s. Bobbie Jo had a great passion for dogs. She was a regular in dog shows and she bred dogs to be sold. That's how she met Lisa Montgomery. Lisa Montgomery is a fucked up person. Her upbringing is sort of muddy, not because it's hidden, but because Lisa Montgomery is a compulsive liar. She grew up in a large household and claimed to have been raped by her father, and whether that is true or not is unsure. She moved out of the home and had 4 children. All 4 of her children came in rapid succession, and she was, after her 3rd child, told by her then husband Carl to sterilize herself. He didn't want any more mouths to feed, and she did as he said. But then the marriage soon broke apart, and Lisa Montgomery met a new man. His name was Kevin. Lisa and Kevin didn't live in Missouri like Bobbie Joe did, they lived in Kansas. But Lisa loved strolling around on online forums in the early 2000s. That's where she met Bobbie Joe Stinnett. Bobbie Joe and Lisa was talking about dogs and even met a couple of times on dog shows. But Lisa was saying other things as well. She was talking about being pregnant. This was something she did all the time to everyone. She kept telling her husband that she was pregnant, but eventually she always had a quote-unquote miscarriage. No one knew that she was sterilized, and she kept fooling everyone. But at some point she felt that lying simply wasn't enough anymore. She wanted something to show for it. She had everyone fooled. This time she was going to have the baby. The only problem with that was that she couldn't have a baby. She had to steal one. But how? Well, let's just say that Lisa wasn't keeping contact with Bobbie Joe to talk about dog shows. She knew that Bobbie Joe Stinnett was pregnant, something they actually bonded over, because Bobbie Joe thought Lisa Montgomery was pregnant as well. And so a meeting was set up. Bobbie Joe trusted Lisa by now. The 23-year-old pregnant Bobbie Joe had no idea that Lisa wasn't coming to purchase a puppy that day. It was a cold day. It was, after all, the middle of December. Bobbie Joe was by this point long into her pregnancy. The baby was due to be born on January 19. It was barely a month away. She was home alone on that day. Her neighbor Chris was going to check in on her too. The community in Skidmore took care of each other, especially with a pregnant young woman like Bobbie Joe. The population was shrinking, so a birth was, in a way, great news. It was a shimmer of hope for the future generations of Skidmore. That day he could see her letting someone in the house. He still wanted to pay her a visit, but didn't want to interrupt her social call. Time passed and things were quiet. Chris needed to leave and decided to just take a peek in the window of Bobbie Joe and Seb's home to make sure everything was alright. He didn't see anything. It was quiet. But he had missed something. No neighbor or bypasser had seen Lisa Montgomery, a middle-aged woman with dirty blonde hair, swing the door open and hurry out to her car with a blanket huddled close to her chest. The blanket was soaked in blood, and inside was a newborn infant. It was Bobbie Joe's baby. It was alive and well, but unfortunately, Bobbie Joe wasn't. After some time, Bobbie Joe's mother, Becky, pulled up to the home. It was eerily silent and the front door stood open. It was a very cold day, so it didn't make much sense that Bobbie Joe would just leave her door open, and Becky walked into the hallway and yelled out for her daughter. Not a peep. She was getting worried now. Bobbie Joe was 8 months pregnant. What if something had happened? What if she had gone into early labor? She kept walking throughout the modest home, and all she got in response was the barking dogs that Bobbie Joe owned. Becky started making her way towards the bedroom, and as she got closer, she stopped dead in her tracks. It was as if she had been struck by lightning. Blood. There was blood everywhere. The wooden floor had been drained in the color of red. There was pools of blood in front of her, but there was something else on the floor. Becky didn't dare to look at it at first, But as she for a second looked at the body on the floor, she saw her daughter. Her stomach had been cut open and she was staring blankly into the empty void. It was pure carnage, like a slaughterhouse. Someone had cut Bobbie Jo's stomach open and taken her child. Becky was overwhelmed. She couldn't believe what was happening. Bobbie Jo was her only daughter, and the joy of expecting a grandchild had been flipped. Eventually she did the best to collect herself and called 911. Bobbie Jo Stinnett had put up a fight. She had fought against her attacker until her last breath. When her mother found her, she had blood in her face, blood running down her arms, and even blood under the soles of her feet, and it looked as if her stomach had exploded. It had just been ripped open, revealing her internal organs. While Becky was conforming to the thoughts of her daughter's fate, Lisa Montgomery was driving down the highway. She called her husband and told him that she had given birth. It was a very odd thing, but her husband for some reason didn't question Lisa. He believed her wholeheartedly when she said she had gone to the hospital and given birth and then been released with the baby so shortly afterwards. After all, she now had the evidence. She had a baby to show for it, and so she did. Meanwhile, the sheriff's office put out an Amber Alert for Bobbie Jo's infant baby. But the whole scenario brought its own set of flaws with it. Let's say a 5-year-old child is abducted. That would make the Amber Alert easier because you have a clear description and probably images of the child. But with Bobbie Jo's baby there was no description or photos. She had been abducted right from her mother's womb. Seb was heartbroken. His wife had been murdered, and his newly born daughter had been abducted. That's when the work began. The task of finding the baby to bring it home. Seb and Becky had lost Bobbie Jo. They couldn't lose the baby as well. The search lasted for a while, and it was extensive. The abduction became national news, and while all of this was going on, Lisa Montgomery showed all her friends and family her new baby. The story was shaky at best though. Not everyone was convinced. Lisa was certain that she had gotten away. She hadn't left any evidence on the crime scene, but what she didn't think about was the trace she had left online. All her chat logs was found when police looked into Bobbie Jo's computer. Lisa Montgomery had tried the same thing once before. She had struck up a conversation with a woman expecting twins. Lisa had then claimed that she also was pregnant with twins, but when the woman she was talking to lost her twins in a miscarriage, Lisa claimed that the same had happened to her. Then she instead found Bobbie Jo. Police paid Lisa Montgomery a visit in Kansas. At first she denied everything, but after some time she broke down. She told them what she had done, and they found the kit she had used. She was caught, and the baby was brought to the hospital for medical examination. It was healthy. As Lisa was handcuffed and shipped away, the newborn baby girl was brought to her father and grandmother. A small beam of light amidst all the darkness. Such a bizarre thing. There is the tragedy of Bobbie Jo, but at the same time, there is the joy of the baby being reunited with its family. The idea of a woman taking another woman's child straight from her womb is sickening, but not as uncommon as one might think. Throughout the 80s and 90s there was over 150 cases of such things taking place. So Lisa Montgomery was caught and found guilty. Why did she do it? Just to convince everyone that she wasn't lying? But at what cost? There is no winners in this. Lisa Montgomery thought she won, but in the end she lost as well. The baby girl taken from Bobbie Jo's womb grew up with her father, her rightful family, but because of Lisa Montgomery's twisted fucking ideas, she never got to meet her mother. So many lives ruined because of one idiotic fucking cunt. But crazy things do happen. They really, really